Welcome back to Reverse Engineering Winners. This is episode 4 of our Explainer series, and today we're diving into the incredible story of NVIDIA. Long before the AI boom, before anyone cared about what a GPU even was, this was a company built by Jensen Huang and his co-founders with one simple mission: making PC gaming graphics look absolutely incredible. But somehow, they quietly laid the groundwork to dominate the entire modern computing landscape. So this brings us to the ultimate mystery we're unpacking today. How in the world did a company famous for rendering video game graphics end up powering practically every single modern artificial intelligence model, including ChatGPT? I mean, it seems like a massive leap, right? Going from rendering polygons for gamers to running the most complex neural networks on the planet. To solve this puzzle, we actually need to ignore AI for a second. We have to rewind right back to the beginning. When Jensen Huang started NVIDIA, the DNA of the company was laser-focused. It wasn't about artificial intelligence at all. It was entirely about building hardware that could render immersive 3D worlds for everyday consumers. Chapter 1. NVIDIA before AI. Long before these sprawling AI data centers popped up everywhere, the semiconductor industry back in the 1990s was brutal. It was incredibly volatile. Dozens of graphics companies literally went bankrupt. But look at NVIDIA's progression here. Founded in '93, inventing the modern GPU by '99, and then releasing CUDA in 2006. It actually wasn't until 2012, when a neural network model called AlexNet sparked the deep learning revolution, that their broader vision started to really make sense. This whole timeline reveals a decades-long stretch of strategic patience. They just kept investing heavily in GPU computing year after year, even when the skeptics completely doubted its use outside of the niche gaming market. And honestly, that patience came straight from the top. Jensen Huang steered the ship with this unshakable belief that accelerated computing would eventually transform, well, everything. Even when they were universally known just as a graphics card maker for teenage gamers, Jensen was operating with a long-term vision. He truly believed the fundamental architecture they were building was destined for something way bigger than just gaming. Which brings us to Chapter 2, the unexpected opportunity. So the real turning point in this story didn't actually come from a gaming breakthrough at all. While NVIDIA's GPUs were perfectly designed to push millions of individual pixels to your screen simultaneously, these brilliant academic researchers started to realize, hey, these chips can do something else entirely. They discovered that this exact same parallel processing architecture, basically doing thousands of tiny math calculations at the exact same time, was absolutely perfect for training neural networks. The math used to calculate the lighting on a digital sports car just happened to be incredibly similar to the math needed to teach a machine how to recognize a picture of a cat. Okay, let's really dive into this, because this is where NVIDIA executed an absolute masterstroke. Realizing this potential, they didn't just go back to the lab and build a slightly faster chip. No, in 2006, they released CUDA. And CUDA was a revolutionary software platform that allowed any developer to program NVIDIA's GPUs for general-purpose computing. They basically handed researchers the keys to the kingdom. Instead of hacking graphics code to do math, developers could now just use standard programming languages to unlock all that massive parallel power inside the GPU. All right, Chapter 3, the biggest bet. Now, this software shift wasn't just some little side project. It was hands down the most massive risk NVIDIA ever took. Instead of just selling isolated pieces of silicon, they spent billions, literally billions of dollars, building an entire software ecosystem around CUDA. They were pouring a huge percentage of their revenue straight into R&D. And Wall Street? Wall Street was incredibly frustrated. They demanded short-term profits. They only cared about how many graphics cards would sell next quarter. But NVIDIA stubbornly kept pouring money into a scientific community that barely even had commercial funding at the time. They were playing the long game. While their direct competitors were fiercely, entirely focused on winning the next big Xbox or PlayStation contract, NVIDIA was silently laying the foundation for a computing paradigm that didn't even have a commercial market yet. They were planting seeds that wouldn't actually sprout for over a decade. And that leads into Chapter 4, the AI explosion. When the deep learning revolution finally caught fire, the world desperately needed immense computing power. And they needed it yesterday. 2022 was an absolute watershed moment. The launch of ChatGPT triggered this unprecedented, mind-boggling global demand. Suddenly, AI wasn't just academic research anymore. It was a consumer product being used by hundreds of millions of people. And pretty much overnight, every major tech company on the planet woke up and realized they were entirely dependent on exactly one supplier to make their AI dreams a reality. The shift was violent and immediate. The narrative completely flipped. We went from talking about teenage gamers buying a few $100s worth of graphics cards to massive tech giants like Microsoft, Meta, Google buying tens of thousands of incredibly expensive NVIDIA servers just to light up these massive global data centers. The gaming company was suddenly the engine of the global economy. Chapter 5: Why NVIDIA Won. So, looking back at the central mystery we started this explainer with, NVIDIA's absolute dominance isn't the result of luck. It's not some sudden pivot. First off, there's the hardware. They won because they had the absolute best silicon ready exactly when the world demanded it. Because they'd spent decades refining parallel processing for gaming. When the AI wave hit, they were miles and miles ahead of their rivals. Everyone else was caught completely off guard, scrambling to build AI chips from scratch. But honestly, the true secret weapon was the software. Even more important than the silicon, they won because of CUDA. Millions of AI researchers and developers were already locked into their ecosystem. If you learned how to code neural networks in university, you learned it on CUDA. It created this impenetrable software moat. Competitors could potentially build a fast chip, sure, but without the software ecosystem that developers already knew and trusted, it just didn't matter. And frankly, competitors are still struggling to cross that moat today. And finally, the timing. This whole story is just a masterclass in strategic patience. The massive wave of artificial intelligence perfectly crashed onto the highly advanced technological beach that NVIDIA had painstakingly spent 2 decades building. They saw the horizon long before anyone else even bothered to look up. Now let's look at the foundational lessons. So, what can we actually take away from this incredible corporate journey? Well, monumental technological shifts are rarely capitalized on by accident. NVIDIA didn't just stumble into building the backbone of AI. They didn't just get lucky that their gaming chips worked for ChatGPT. They actively, intentionally engineered the foundation for the future of computing before anyone else realized it was even necessary. They funded the ecosystem, they supported the researchers, and they completely ignored the short-term demands of Wall Street so they could focus on the horizon. Which leaves us with this final, really provocative thought. As we watch the AI revolution reshape our entire world today through NVIDIA's hardware, we have to ask ourselves, what other invisible foundation is being built right now? Who is quietly laying the groundwork, taking the contrarian bets, and building the ecosystem that will completely define the next decade of our lives? Keep your eyes open, because the next NVIDIA is already building tomorrow. Thanks for joining me on this explainer, and I'll catch you in the next one.